Now we're going to get into... Oh, what the fuck? Autoplay's on? Get this fucking out of here. I was like, who's talking to me?
So get together, have a few laughs.
Uh-oh, shit, lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
Lady, put the freaking gun down on the ground right now. Take your son across the freaking street and say until he's gonna get you.
Hello, and welcome to Where There's a Willis, There's a Way, a film podcast about the multitude of works by Bruce Willis. My name is Josh Carter.
And I'm Kendrick Martin. Today we will be covering 1999's The Story of Us, directed by Rob Reiner, written by Alan Zwiebel and Jesse Nelson. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, welcome. What we do here is an in-depth breakdown of a movie starring Bruce Willis, both from a film perspective and his individual contribution. We add that movie to our rankings, we talk trivia, and then we spin the Wheel of Willis.
You can find all of our previous episodes at williswaypod.com. Find other podcasts in the Last of the Action Heroes podcast network over at lastoftheactionheroes.com. Rate and review us on iTunes. Tell your friends, your cat's friends. Everybody loves Bruce.
Everybody loves Bruce. I don't think my cat does, but mostly everybody else does.
Pretty much everybody else. And that one, like, Walgreens worker.
Oh, yeah.
But,
yeah. Who posted the mask photo about him.
Yeah.
Normally what we like to do up top at these podcast episodes, and by normally I mean every time because we're contractually required to. Mm-hmm. We give you an idea if this movie is going to be worth pausing, going and watching, and then coming back, or if you should just listen to the podcast episode recap. We do that because in our film discussion, we usually go ahead and just spoil the whole movie. And so what we have come up with is a patented method to review We've come up with a patented method to rate a movie. So what we have done is we have the Bruce Willis rating system where we rate a movie a Bruce Willis out of a Bruce Willis. Joshua, what would you rate this movie?
I think I'm going to rate this movie a brew.
Ooh.
Not above, but not below.
That's a BRU?
A BRU.
I went back and forth, but I think I'm going to stick with a Bruck.
Oh, all right.
I almost went full Bruce, but decided to just pull it back.
Yeah. And we can get into like some of the differences and stuff like that. You and I probably liked a lot of the same stuff about it, but the dislikes probably just didn't shine as much, I would guess, unless there's like some secret positive to this movie that I didn't notice.
The error of our Bruce Willis ranking system is there's not an easy section for good but not worth recommending, because I feel like this movie is good and has some merits, but I don't think I would recommend it to anybody.
Yep. It would be different if it was like free and on already and you weren't doing anything else. Like, then maybe.
Yeah. Way to sell it.
Well, I definitely should have looked at this earlier, but did we get any emails this week?
I just checked, and the answer is no.
No emails. All right. Well, if you guys heard that moment and you were really sad about us not having any emails, you can fix that by emailing us at williswaypod@gmail.com. You can also tweet at us at williswaypod, or if you are not so brave as to shout at the world, aka Twitter, and then throw our handle in there, you can just message us on Twitter via a direct message, or you can follow us on Instagram and get a hold of us there, also at Willis Waypod. If you want to get a hold of us via the back channels and a more action-oriented way, you can reach out to us on the Last of the Action Heroes Podcast Network Facebook page. Just log on to there and then say, "Give me the Willis Boys, stat," and then we'll show up.
Yeah, that's how that works typically. It's also worth noting that besides leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, another great help you can do in promote this podcast is just following us on social media. The more followers we have, the more likely we're to get picked up by podcast aggregators and noticed by various podcast searchers. So go ahead, look us up, follow us. Josh usually tweets some jokes, and then I'll usually say, no, Josh, that's not funny.
That's true. This is all true. And you can't tell us that it's not true unless you follow us.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, before we talk about the story of us, we're going to take a quick break.
Kendrick, didn't we talk about the story of us last week?
Was that a Suicide Squad
No.
reference?
Our story, the Willis Way Pod, the story of us.
Yeah.
I'll throw
Yeah.
that one out on the old Twitter.
Okay. All right. Now, Josh. What if the United States, instead of being a country, was just a skyrise building, and we were talking about the different floors? So this movie was actually the story of U.S.
I also noticed that, like, at the beginning, it was like us, and it was like in red and blue at the beginning credits, and I was like, is the U.S. somehow going to be a part of this? Is this some Americana piece? And thankfully, it was not.
No.
I don't know that I could have taken that. Now we're going to get into the story of us.
To me, the most romantic, beautiful love stories ever were the ones where two people meet, fall in love, and then 50, 60 years later, one of them dies, and then a few days after that, the other one dies because they just can't bear to live without each other. Not that that's such a good example of a happy ending. I mean, you got two dead people in that example, but that's how I always thought things would be for Katie and me. I do.
I'm pregnant.
It's a boy.
Happy birthday. I'm pregnant.
It's a girl.
Happy Mother's Day. You're not really hearing me. You're not listening.
You can't let go of anything.
Why should you be responsible for anything?
Oh, that's right. You're perfect, and I've done nothing right in 15 years.
My favorite therapist was the one with the birthmark on his forehead.
Right. The one that looked like the state of California. How could you pay attention to anything that guy was saying?
This cycle of closeness, then estrangement, what instigates it, triggers it? First thing that comes to your mind.
Sacramento.
Governor Gray Davis.
Fear. That's the main motivator for everything. That and guilt are the two emotions that keep a society humming.
It's the wear and tear of the job. The diapers, the tantrums, the homework, the state capitals. Suddenly all you're aware of is that it's virtually impossible to French kiss a person who takes the new roll of toilet paper and leaves it resting on top of the empty cardboard roll. God forbid he takes the 2 seconds to actually replace it. Does he not see it? Does he not see it?
Isn't this the moment where one of us is supposed to say, look, this is ridiculous. We love each other. All couples go through this. Let's give it another try.
He's so funny.
It's chicken pox.
It's over. I love you. I hate you.
My goldfish died.
My hamster died.
Your father's dying.
If you want, you can stay for dinner.
You sure?
No.
That audio was from the trailer of Story of Us. I'm going to read the description from IMDb. In its entirety, the description reads, Ben and Katie Jordan are a married couple who go through hard times in 15 years of marriage. And that's it. That's all that you get. I hope that you guys were hoping for a lot of morsels because they were not interested in giving you any.
I don't know why that's so funny to me. It's just like Gennaro had a life. I mean, I guess, story of us. That's what it is.
Gennaro,
us, yeah,
having a life. Yep. You can find this movie for rent on video on demand.
And we're going to be spoiling it like we always do.
Oh, right. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, even though that description really kind of spoiled it on its own.
Yeah, sorry. If you guys didn't know that this movie had people going through hard times, sorry about the spoilers there. Or if you didn't know that their names were Ben and Katie, also sorry about that.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Last name Jordan, and that they're married. Another thing that really cracked me up for some reason was the fact that the movie is titled The Story of Us, not Story of Us. And sometimes it just like doesn't make grammatical sense to say the movie called The Story of Us.
Yep.
And it gives me a chuckle.
Yep.
Gives me a little chuckle.
Yes, it does. Little chuckles. Speaking of little chuckle, I wasn't entirely expecting this movie to be quite as funny as it was at times. Did you also have kind of that moment where you're like, oh, this is a little bit funny sometimes? Or were you just like caught up in the sads?
Well, I mean, you have Rob Reiner directing it, which is kind of a giveaway for a little bit of the vibe. I mean, I guess he doesn't do it, he's not entirely comedic, but he definitely swings for the comedy fences. Mm-hmm. And it starts out right from the get-go. You kind of know that there's going to be a little bit of humor because early on there's a scene where they're in the car behind a house that's moving.
Oh,
and Bruce Willis is just cracking jokes about like someone taking a dump out the window and other various things about the fact that they're having to move a house. And I was like, oh, that's the kind of movie it's going to be. And it actually I was excited for this movie because we've been watching a lot of action movies. Like action, hero Bruce Willis is kind of the era we're in. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, we're going to get to see a more moving side of him. We're going to get to see him be comedic. I actually meant to look at our list. I guess I could do that right now. But is this the first time we've seen him be a parent? He was kind of a parent.
No, he was a parent in Die Hard.
What? Oh, I meant like parenting of a child. He technically, I guess, was a parent in Die Hard, but I don't think we didn't see him interact with a kid at all.
That is entirely possible. Let me look at my Bruce Willis list.
In Country, he plays an uncle, but an uncle who's parenting his niece to some extent.
Armageddon.
I suppose. Yeah. So this is the first time we've seen him be a parent to like kids.
A younger kid, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I thought that was kind of sweet. But I think at the end of the day, the chemistry between him and Michelle Pfeiffer never felt fully there.
Yeah.
My favorite moment actually was the kind of montage scene that actually the trailer is pretty much just lifted straight from the movie. Of a montage of like the two of them kind of just remember their relationship. And so you skip through like all 15 years in the span of 2 minutes or whatever. And I thought that was like a very well edited, super sweet kind of way to progress through the ups and downs of a relationship, where it's like fights and kids' birth and your parents pass away and moving and your kids goldfish dies and all the kinds of stuff that happens. And we get to see Bruce Willis have terrible hair.
Yes. Yeah. I wish that we were ranking these movies on Bruce Willis's hair, but we're not, and that'd be too much to go back and do. But this movie would either be the top or the bottom, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, that's that's for sure.
But yeah, I agree. I loved that montage. I thought that it was maybe a little bit too quick of editing at some points, and I wanted to see them kind of breathe in those scenes, because so much of this movie is like showing us that their relationship is very toxic, and then they're like, oh, but there's these little moments that make the relationship worthwhile, and it's like, that's very movie magic of you, but small little pleasant moments do not a good relationship make. So like, I found myself disagreeing with the ending of this movie quite a bit. And I knew it was going to not end terrible, because they harped on it being terrible the entire way through. And I feel like if you want to end a movie sad, you have to kind of earn that sad ending, whereas a happy ending's like the default in American media. So I expected it to go that way. But yeah, that montage was pretty great. I also really liked the scene where it's another montage where they build up a joke, and they build to a joke with the rule of 3, and then they have the joke springboard into another scene that is also a joke, but then show things about the characters as well. And I was like, oh, this is actually really fun. It was one of the few moments of this movie where I felt like the writing and the directing and the acting was all working towards this thing that was working well together. And it was when they were, both Katie and Ben are talking about how they've seen a bunch of different therapists about their marriage. And then each time it was like a weird thing going on. So like the first one, there was the guy who had a lisp, and then they make fun of lisp for a little bit, which was great. But the 90s, we didn't have like offensiveness then, so you're allowed to do stuff like that and get away with it. But anyways, they make fun of that for a little bit, and then and their reaction to it is pretty great. And then the next person that they go to, he has a birthmark that looks like the state of California. And you hear that, and then you see it, and you're like, "Oh my god, that does look like California." And then they make a joke about that
over his eye. Too,
I know,
so it's not noticeable. But yeah, it is the state of California, massive state of California.
Yeah, it's so great. And then the third one that they go to, they're like, he had a prostate problem, and then it shows the guy, and he's like, "Well, you see, whenever you're in bed, it's actually 6 of you that's in bed because," and then he like, "Oh, excuse me," and then he goes pee, and then he comes back, and he's like, "The 6 people who are in bed are you, 2, and then your parents," points to Bruce Willis, "and your parents," points to Katie, and he's like, "And so, oh wait, excuse me," and then he gets up and goes pee again, and then you're like, "Ah, ha, 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 that guy's weird, also that thing was kind of weird, whatever." And then the next scene, they show them starting to fight, and then as they're fighting in bed, they pan over to Bruce Willis's side, and then there's suddenly 2 old people right behind them. One right behind him. One of them's played by Betty White, who's playing Bruce Willis's character's mom. And then it pans over to the other person, Katie, and then there's 2 people behind her who are both of their parents. And then their parents are sort of they're having dialogue that's underneath the dialogue that Bruce Willis and Michelle Pfeiffer are saying. And their dialogue is kind of building to this fight because they're both saying lines that their parents essentially fed to them as they were growing up and exemplified for them in their own relationships. And I was like, oh wow, that's actually like pretty deep and meaningful. And it's a good metaphor, even if they made it out of this joke. And then a lot of the rest of the movie just is not that good. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you that we're not ever really shown. I feel like everything is extremely simplified, and I mean, I guess it's a movie and you kind of have to do that, but the 2 characters are fighting, and they have like one thing that they hate about the other person. Katie thinks that Ben is childlike and like doesn't plan enough, and Ben thinks Katie has to have everything planned, and can't be spontaneous. Like that's kind of how it breaks down. And it definitely seems a lot of the time that it ends up focusing more on Katie's shortcomings and like, why can't she just loosen up more? But I'm not sure if that's just because maybe Michelle Pfeiffer was less charismatic than Bruce Willis, and so it kind of never felt like the movie was portraying an equally broken relationship. It just kind of seemed like she was more portrayed as the one who wasn't willing to come around, because Bruce Willis is often saying like, well, let's keep trying to get through this, and she's like, oh no, I'm done with you. So I wish that
keep going.
I was gonna say, I wish that had been fleshed out a little more. I mean, this movie's not super long, and so it kind of had to do the best with what it had, and I think it did a decent job. Like there are movies that have done it better, but I think this movie didn't do a terrible job. It just did kind of a middle of the road job, as you know, evident by like the rating I gave it up at the top. But what I did like was a lot of this movie shows their happy memories of not only like what you think of when you think of a happy memory with your partner of, you know, laughing or having a great time somewhere, or having a kid or raising kids and stuff like that, but also something that at least I can relate to, and I think a lot of people can relate to with their partner, is kind of being around someone who seems completely bananas, but no one else seems to realize this but your partner. And this happens a lot. One example being all those counselors they visit. You know, they montage it and they show you all the ones, and there's others that they reference that some of them are kind of like a framing device. It gives it a chance for them to both kind of narrate what's going on. But a lot of times these counselors, these therapists, are just completely bananas, and Ben and Katie are just kind of looking at each other like, what on earth is going on? And that's like a great bonding moment. And then there's also the scene where they go to Venice, and there's the other tourist couple they keep running into.
Oh man.
Who seems completely off their canal boat, and
the Kirby's from Cleveland.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Kirby's from Cleveland. And I just love the ways they keep trying to escape them, like giving them a fake hotel and giving them fake names and all this other fake information. And the Kirby's just kept being like, well, that didn't seem to make sense, but I'm still here talking to you. And I just like the moment, because everybody's been there where it's like, oh my gosh, this person is very aggravating, but I have to be polite. And the only person who knows what I'm going through is my partner. And then later you can be like the shared, you know, emotion of, wow, we just went through this together. I thought that was adorable, and kind of showed like novel ways to flesh out the relationship arc.
Yeah. I thought that you also had kind of a mirrored moment of that, where Bruce Willis's character was getting shown that apartment at one point, and then the lady is like going off about how different famous people's famous relatives or not less famous relatives have stayed there or looked at the apartment or whatever.
So-and-so's brother or something.
Yeah. And he just kind of has to like, yeah, it looks good. It looks great. Whatever. And has to just kind of be doing that. But yeah, I did like that as a framing device. I still think that the movie didn't really like, I think the biggest problem for this movie isn't necessarily its moment to moment dialogue. I think that could be better. They said God forbid a billion times in this movie. God forbid they say anything else. But the problem that I had with this movie wasn't like the moment to moment stuff as much. It was like, what is the motivation of Ben's character? What does he want out of a relationship? And in what ways does Katie provide that for him? And in what ways does Katie not? And then what does Katie want out of a relationship? And what ways does Ben provide that for her? And what ways does he not? And then how do they figure out all that nebulous in the middle stuff? Because I didn't really get what Ben wanted from Kate. He just seemed like he wanted to just goof off and have fun, and was like, you should also just goof off and have fun. But that's not really like, I don't know. I didn't really like get what his motivation was necessarily. And then Kate's motivation of being like, you know, it kind of seems like you're not really wanting to grow up or take any responsibility for anything. And then Bruce is just totally blowing her off the entire movie. I was like, well, you know, there are like a lot of things to figure out when you're parenting. There's a lot of details, and him not wanting to take responsibility for it, or also being bad at listening constantly throughout the movie. I could see why she'd be like, you know, he's actually not what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. I did fall in love with somebody, but that isn't him. So I don't think that this is working out. And then at the end, it's like, well, it's got to work out because it's a movie. And I was like, well, if you'd actually thought through these motivations and done the pre-work a little bit more, I feel like you would have had a more fleshed out story.
Yes, and we might be like reading into this too much. I mean, I guess that is.
But that's what we do
on this podcast: is we read into things too much. But I was
check out our Siege episode if you want to hear more overreading of a movie.
I was definitely thinking like, wow, they've been to umpteen number of marriage counselors and therapists and all these different people, and they still fight like 20-year-old children who don't know how to communicate with anybody. Like, I feel like that's the first thing you do in any sort of marriage counseling or marriage therapy session is they talk about how to deal with disagreements and fights and how to like express yourself and listen and all these tools
mm-hmm.
That we do not see any of.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I was like, what are they doing?
Yeah, many other movies have at least like done the thing where they'll say like, Dr. Dinkenstorven told us to listen, and I'm listening, and you're not. They could have made jokes out of it of how like one of them's trying and the other one didn't, and all this stuff, but it's never
mm-hmm.
referenced.
Yep.
So I think that's probably where I'm thinking a little too literally about how this is, but I do like what you said about, because I thought a little about this too, about how we're never really explicitly told what they're wanting and why the other person, I mean, other than the fact that they just fight a lot.
Yeah.
You just see them kind of bickering, and then that's kind of where it goes. And that's why the ending, I think, feels a little shallow, is because we assume that maybe she, Michelle Pfeiffer was just like, I guess bickering is life.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's also like that ambiguous reference to the woman that Bruce Willis's character had an affair
possibly
with,
cheated on.
Talked to on the phone. Like, it sounded like he was just having a phone conversation, and then she got upset with him. I don't know. That was kind of like weirdly referenced, and it was brought up as like a hurt that continued to hurt over time. And I was like, at least I wanted Bruce Willis to admit to his like guy dinner friends of like, I did this and not a great idea, or I did this and blah, blah, blah. That conversation with Rob Reiner and Paul Reiser about wanking off to your secretary. And I was like, what movie did we just suddenly switch over to?
Yep. Yeah. I don't really know where a lot of that was going, because it felt like sometimes they're like, oh, this scene isn't meant to be taken seriously, it's just a joke. And then other times they're like, oh no, this is a really important scene, but they're both like set up kind of the same.
Yeah.
So
I did like, I thought it was kind of cute and also kind of realistic, at least in my reading of it, the Rob Reiner character or his relationship, because we're shown the scene where the guys are eating, lunch at one table and their wives are eating lunch at a different table. And it cuts back and forth of each of them talk about their lives and their relationships and all this stuff. And I don't remember the actress who plays Rob Reiner's character's wife.
Rita Wilson.
Yeah. Rita Wilson, and she's like talking about how terrible it is, and like, he doesn't put the toilet paper back on the roll and like everything. But then when she finds out that Bruce Willis and Michelle Pfeiffer are getting a divorce, she could have just said, "Wow, good for you. You're dumping this guy," or like you're being single and you're gonna get your freedom back. She instead is like quick to say, "Yes, there's all these terrible things, but there's all these great things that we have," and kind of like I wanted to see a movie about their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were almost more interesting than our main characters were, I thought.
Yeah. Because they're both supportive, but also like saying, life isn't easy and all this stuff. And
yep,
I was like, wow, this is not the response I expected from you.
Yep. Yeah, and it's also interesting that they had those other friends, and then they could have painted one as like relationship seems toxic, get a divorce. And then the other one is like just think about what you're throwing away before you do that. Kind of show a little bit of dynamics there, but no, the other friends are there for that one scene, and then you just get rid of them, and then you never talk about them again. So, I also loved the stupid fleshy part at the top of your leg. Oh yeah,
analogy. I thought,
yep.
It was so stupid, but I was just laughing at like your ass is just the fleshy part at the top of your leg. It's not anything else. And he starts this off by just like bending over in his trousers and being like, "What do you see?" Oh man, Rob Reiner. That guy's
what a
joker.
Blessing.
That guy's a joker.
Oh yeah, yeah. I liked him, and I liked Rita Wilson and Bruce Willis all quite a bit, but I really liked Michelle Pfeiffer in this. I thought she did a great job. But,
interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. Does that mean that you were less enthused?
Yeah, I didn't really care for her that much. Like I mentioned, I felt like her, both her like character as written and portrayed felt subpar to what Bruce Willis was doing, and I don't know why. They just didn't feel like either of them. Like she didn't want to match his energy, or she didn't have the written opportunity to match his energy, or I don't know. She didn't work for me, but
that's interesting. Well, I mean, that's why we have two people on this podcast instead of just me talking about it. So we get a little bit of a difference of opinion.
That's why, not for laughing at my jokes.
Oh, yes, that's true. It'd be weird if you just told a joke and then went ha ha ha, and then moved on to another joke. And
I should get one of those. Have you ever seen those old timey laugh track devices?
Like the big giant ones,
like those weird boxes that look like some kind of demon that they're like pull.
You
out
like
a
wheel
tube
it
and it sounds like
around.
someone's laughing.
Yeah. Like the old laugh track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from like the Brady Bunch and stuff. Yeah, I
yeah.
should get one of those.
Yeah. You could replace me easily.
Yeah, I'll just have like a pull cord for some quote about a movie. And...
You're like, all right, let's go to the bad take of the day, and then you just play some random thing.
Wow, what a self-own.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about if I had anything. Also, one of my favorite things about this movie was that at the beginning they're like, with music by Eric Clapton, and they like play a little bit of it, and you're like, wow, Eric Clapton, he did some music for this. And then, no, he did one song. They play it 4 times, but he did one song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the trailer, and it's not a bad song, kind of catchy.
It is. It's a good song, yeah. But yeah. I liked that. There's also a part that I'm not entirely sure if I liked or did not like, but there's a moment where Bruce Willis is getting separated, and he's like sad man who's living a sad single life for a second. And the way that he does this is he's like just diving into his work, and he's a writer, but his writing setup is he has a big giant empty room with one desk in the middle of it, in the literal middle of the room, writing on it. And I was like, oh my God, this is the most movie setup of a room ever. Because who like has a desk in the middle of a giant living room as their one piece of furniture?
I think that's just a trope of like guy moves out and doesn't know how to compute furniture and is like, I am man. I only use box and table to live. I assume, but
it was great. It was a little bit of a movie magic. That's what that scene was.
You did remind me of something though. It's almost like a B plot, though. I don't know if I'd go quite that far. But the book he's writing is like a story about his grandma, and he talks to Paul Reiser, which I believe is, I assume, his agent or maybe his publisher, and is like, I want to write this book about my grandma. She fled Nazi Germany or whatever it was, and all this stuff. And then so he sits down and starts writing this book, and at the end of the book decides that his grandparents were only together because of necessity, and they probably didn't really want to stay together, and it was all a sham, and she must have been so miserable. And I guess that's kind of like him coming to a realization about the illusion of marriage or something. I'm not really sure, but then it just kind of disappears, and he's like fine getting back together. And I was like, what do we need to do about this book thing here?
Yeah,
not totally sure. I also loved wait, hold on. Is that not Paul Reiser? I thought that was Paul
No, I don't think it's Paul Reiser. I think it's a guy named Tim Matheson.
This is Paul Reiser. I swear that was who.
You said Paul Reiser a couple of times, and I was like,
No, yeah, I've got it right. He's Dave, Ben's literary agent.
Oh, he is
uncredited in the story of us.
Oh, uncredited. Interesting. I think I was getting him confused with the Marty character, or not Marty. I was getting him confused with the friend. What's that friend's name? Or is that Dave?
Oh, was that guy is Tim Matheson in Story of Us?
Yeah, but I think he's the dentist guy.
He's the guy who dates.
Yeah.
Marty. He's the guy who dates. What's her name for two
minutes?
Are you sure that's him? Now
Dave
I'm confusing
Vince.
myself. Paul Reiser was definitely in it, but I don't know if it was Paul Reiser the guy who was wanking off at the table.
That's what. No, I can't remember. I don't even know.
Paul Reiser's definitely the guy who turns him. He says like, "Don't write this book, you fool."
Yeah.
But now I'm misremembering about the table scene. Well,
I don't even remember.
Okay. At least I know that he's in this movie. At least I feel a little better about myself.
Oh, no, he is, because if you click on his character quote on IMDb, like if you click on his little character, Dave, Ben's literary agent, it pops up with one of the lines that he's in, and one of those is from The Dinner.
Oh, okay. All right.
Good. Never mind. I'm wrong. Sorry.
Oh, Joshua, questioning me. Listen, this is the real reason we have Josh here, is because he keeps me honest.
Yep, exactly.
I don't even know what I was talking about anymore.
You said one other thing after you're talking about the grandma side story.
No, that was it. That was the grandma side story. I didn't know what the point of the grandma side story was.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know what the point of our little sideshow there was. Other than
I did. I also enjoyed the back view of a crossword puzzle inventor. I thought.
Yeah, what the hell type of a job is that for a movie? Who thinks of that?
It's not Will Short's New York Times crossword editor.
Yeah,
extraordinaire. I mean, I guess that was nice that they had. That was a nice little bit of flavor in that it wasn't just Randy Rando's doing busy business jobs. It wasn't like he's out there selling the business to the business people. And
well, I mean, Bruce Willis might have been, because his like, oh, I'm a comedy writer. I write for comedy. I do the writing of the comedy. That was like the most tacked on thing of all time. And then somehow this comedian writer has been working at the same job for like 25 years and has enough money to like go live by himself. And we never see him do a single minute of work.
Yeah, he's got a dope apartment for not doing a minute of work.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else movie related before we move on?
Nothing else that's not Bruce Willis related.
You want to talk about Paul Reiser some more?
I think I'm good. I think I got all the Reiser out of me. I was gonna try to make like some Red Rising joke, but I couldn't think of it. So insert joke here.
I thought we could start a podcast called Paul Reiser and Shine, but
Riser and Shine, Riser.
Paul Reiser. Okay, never mind. We really gotta get going here, or our brains are just gonna melt out.
My brain is melting out. My brain's melting.
It's actually cooler in Oregon than it used to be, so that's good.
Yep.
All right, so that can only mean one of two things, and it is time for the Star Trek connection. Star Trek Connection is where we connect all of Bruce Willis's works to the Star Trek Expanded Universe cinematic universe.
Cinematically.
There are at least two that I found. One of which is Jordan Lund, who plays a minister in this, I believe, at the wedding scene in the flashback. He plays several Star Trek characters in several Star Trek series.
Woo, go on.
He plays Kolj in Star Trek Next Generation episode. He plays Woban in a Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode. And he also plays Ska-Lar in a Star Trek Enterprise episode.
Like the horns come in. It's Ska-Lar, no. Princess.
Wow, Josh, that's a good joke. You should write that one down for your comedy.
All right, I'll add it to my Star Trek related Jordan Lund series of comedy.
Yeah, your stand-up bit that is only after you've been talking about Star Trek connections from The Story of Us. Okay, then there's also Wendy Shaw, who did some ADR in The Story of Us. And in Star Trek, she played a hologram in a Star Trek Voyager episode. Hologram named Charlene.
Ooh. There's also another one that I found as well while I was just bipping and bopping. And apparently the state of California therapist was in a Star Trek video game. So Victor Raider Wexler. And Raider Wexler.
I thought you were going to say the state of California is also in Star Trek, so vis-a-vis.
Oh, no. But he was in the Star Trek game Hidden Evil, released in the same year, 1999.
Ooh.
I know. Apparently he plays
a Star Trek game.
Yeah, same here. He plays a Romulan guard / computer. So, I guess if you meet a Romulan guard and then he turns into a computer, sorry for spoiling that for you.
Yeah, sure. Maybe the Romulan guard slashes the computer. Who's to say?
That is true. That is true. All right. Do you want to know what else is true?
What, Josh? What else is true?
This
Tell me
movie.
all the rest of the truth.
This movie was made on a $50 million budget. So roughly the size of... Let's see. Let us see now. Roughly the size of North. Okay, that makes sense. I could see that. It was made on a $50 million budget in 1999. And the box office return was $58 million. So for those of you doing the math at home, that's bad. That's only an $8 million return. And you can bet that the advertising and marketing cost more than $8 million. So this movie, while on paper made some money, probably did not make executives super happy.
Did you know that if you stacked up $50 million in a straight pile, it would be 17,000 feet tall? 17,916 feet tall.
Wow. Are you stacking them like as just a wad of cash, or are you trying to make it as tall of a stack as possible so you like fold them in half?
No, you just neither. You just lay them flat.
You lay them flat. Oh, like end to end?
No, you just lay. You just have a. Have you ever stacked money before?
Yeah.
What kind of weirdo? Do you wad it up and then put each wad on top of every other wad? No. You have a pile of bills.
Woo. Well, I guess I learn more every day. Thanks for coming to the money stacking part of this podcast.
I just, trying to help you out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. So that was the money. You want to talk about old Brucey boy?
Yeah. So I really liked Bruce's performance in this movie. I think he got to show a lot of his comedy. We know we've talked around this quite a bit, but I think his husband performance is pretty childlike and shallow, but I thought he played a great dad. I loved all the jokes he has with his kids and how they have like things they say over and over again and like little routines. I thought that the bits with his friends are funny. I thought his breakdown scene in the cafe near the end was a little forced. I didn't really believe that he was drunk on wine and crying outside the restaurant, but yeah. What did you think?
I liked that we got a Bruce Willis freak out moment, but I wouldn't say that it was like his best. I was just excited that we got one because we haven't for a hot minute. I think it's been many, many movies since we've gotten a Bruce Willis freak out moment. Mm-hmm. And since I said that, I'm going to go look and see when the last time was. But it's
your Letterboxd list of Bruce Willis freak out moments.
Oh, that would be great. Would I rank them chronologically and by how good the freak out was?
And size of freak out.
Ooh, that is good. That is good. I don't think we've gotten one since like Die Hard with a Vengeance. I think that was probably like the last one.
You're probably right.
So, only 4 years, but many movies. And of those movies, we've watched The Siege, where he plays a boring general.
I was trying to think if there's one in Armageddon, but all he does is go on about how they don't know squat about drilling.
You guys don't know jack about drilling. Yeah. So silly. That movie needed a Bruce Willis freakout moment.
I know, exactly.
Every movie would be better with a Bruce Willis freakout moment, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. I thought that he was a fun dad, bad husband, but fun in the role for sure. So, yeah, good job, Bruce. You get an A.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't believe it's true, but I hope we see more Brucey rom-coms.
Yeah, I do too, because I like him in this type of a movie. I think that after seeing enough Striking Distance and Last Man Standings, I could really use a little bit of a break from that.
I'm looking at our canonical document. And of the movies we've done, so this is the 32nd movie, I believe, right? No.
32nd episode.
32nd episode, 29th movie. Just under half we've given over the Bruce W. or Bruce W. or higher. So more than I thought. I would thought it'd be a lower number, but it's like 13 out of the 28 have gotten a Bruce W. or better. 16 for you. So
yeah. Yep. Well, it's hard to tell on some of these too, because it's like we didn't start doing the patent until we didn't get the patent officiated until partway through our podcast. So
right,
some of these are a little bit
mid-episode,
wonk.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of rankings, where do you think you'd pop this sucker in?
Yeah.
Load the sucker up.
I think that this movie is really close to being a lot higher than it is, but the problem with it, I think, is mostly the script. And so I am going to put it right behind Billy Bathgate and right above Sunset, I think. So at my number 18.
I agree that this movie, it's just really hard to, I struggle with trying to figure it out because yes, it's problematic and I don't know if I'd jump to watch it again, but also I enjoyed my time watching it, which I can't say for a lot of these.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I liked North a little bit better. I'm going to put it right under North, which puts it at 15 for me.
Okay. I like North quite a bit better. So
Yeah, you did. That movie went south on me.
Yikes. Oh God. All right. So with that in our mind. Oh man, Kendrick, do you know what time it is?
Let me check my spreadsheet. I think it's time for me to look at my watch and tell you that it's time for the Wheel of Willis.
The Wheel of Willis. Well, do you know what we do every time we get to the Wheel of Willis?
Every time that we reach the point in the podcast where we ponder the plentiful... I got no more P words. We spin this good old wheel, and we always say the same thing every time that we spin the Wheel of Willis.
And that thing that we say is... Whisk that wheel! All right. This question is, if you could give one character in this movie braces, who would it be?
Like, who do I think has bad teeth? Or who do I think just needs braces?
Who would need braces?
I'm going to say... let's go Paul Reiser. He seems like a guy who needs braces.
And
he's definitely in this movie.
He is definitely in this movie. Yeah, I'm trying to think who... I'd probably give one of the... I'd probably give, like, the first therapist braces. That way you could explain away the lisp without having to make fun of people with the speech impediment.
That's a good call. Way
So.
to use your noggin.
Yep, there we go. Well, thank you to Mystery Person for submitting that. If you submit suggestions for the Wheel of Willis going forward, I will get your name on there. So you will get credit for that. These are all old suggestions, so I do not have your name on there. And I am sorry. I will do better. I am learning
We are constantly improving.
Yes, exactly.
I am berating Josh better, and he's remembering names better.
True. All right. Well. It's come to
the point in the podcast where we bring it to a close, dear listener.
I feel like when you said that, there should be like sad music playing.
If you are listening and would like to get a hold of us, again, you can email us, williswaypod@gmail.com. Follow us, like our jokes, neither on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook @WillisWayPod. And find our reviews on Apple Podcasts and leave a rating. You can find our previous episodes over at williswaypod.com or other Last of the Action Hero Podcast Network podcasts over at lastoftheactionheroes.com.
And every single episode now, we're trying to end with a little sweet treat to close out the show and leave you guys a little bit of positivity. So, Kendrick, what is your sweet treat for this week?
My sweet treat is to get outside, enjoy the outdoors. Here in North America, we're approaching the end of summer. We still have a few weeks left, but I would encourage you, if possible, go for a walk, go to the park, go camping, go on a hike, go swim in a body of water that is safe and not filled with eels or alligators, and other outdoor activities.
All right. Well, my suggestion is going to be to stay inside and watch this TV show, but I guess I'm going to throw that one away into the garbage can for next episode, and I'll think of something that's also outside.
You can watch TV outside. That'd be weird and kind of
true.
You could watch TV outside.
True. Yeah, my recommendation was actually going to be based on something that we talked about in our last week's episode, where we had talked about the Suicide Squad. And Kendrick mentioned that DC is at its most fun when it's doing weird and wacky things, like with Doom Patrol. And I went, oh, that show slipped off my radar. So I went and I watched Doom Patrol, some of it, and I am liking it a lot so far. I really appreciate when DC Comics does stuff that doesn't suck, because I love DC. So you can go catch Doom Patrol on HBO Max. I'm only about 3 episodes in, so if it sucks after 3 episodes, I'm sorry. But if that also slipped off your radar, and it was originally on like that DC Comics streaming service that didn't really go anyplace, but if you didn't get the DC service, but you now have HBO, I'd recommend it. I think it's a lot of fun, and it's great getting to watch all of these talented actors and people making the show work so hard on it. I think it's a lot of fun so far.
Nice. That's awesome. I've been meaning to check that out. So,
well, now you can watch it when you're outside.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what's important, is we help you do things inside and outside.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on Twitter at Joshing Carter.
And you can follow me at KMartinix.
All right. Next week, we're going to be covering Sixth Sense.
Wow. What about senses 1 through 5?
Well, we are going to bring everybody up to speed for those of you that didn't watch all the sequels, so you won't have to panic. We'll cover everything.
Perfect. I am excited.
Yeah, same. All right, we'll tune in next week. Until then, have a good one. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Oh, yeah.
I muted my laptop so I would not hear frown effects, but I keep hearing them.
Blips and boops.
Yeah, stop with the blips and bloops. Apple, more like crapple.